little while. Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Marie Dorion. I'm a Métis artist from Central Saskatchewan. I have a beautiful family from Cumberland House, Saskatchewan, which is really one of the oldest Métis communities here in Saskatchewan. I come from a Métis family where a lot of my aunties, the grandmothers, they were all so creative. Their way they expressed their creativity was through their clothing, through their traditional clothing, through their sewing, and their beadwork, of course. They were known for their Cumberland House style beadwork. Many of my aunties actually still do bead, and many of the younger generation have are starting to pick up the art form, which of course includes me, even though I'm getting older now. I continue to take on those beautiful teachings and apply them with like I have access to things that the older generation didn't. So I'm a kind of in a neat generation where I've been able to have a little bit of the older styles, the history done in an oral lived experience model. And then I have the new contemporary influences, and I get to see young Métis innovators, fashion designers, take some of this and innovate it today. So I'm in a really wonderful time period where I get to see two worlds and how they intersect with creativity and innovation. The story I want to share with you today is about the Métis High Plains ribbon skirt, history of the pattern, the style, and some elements of design to give you some tools for doing the Rupertsland lesson, where you get to create your own Métis inspired High Plains style ribbon skirt with, incorporating Métis design so that you can learn about Métis people. And if you're Métis, you can get to connect with the ancestors of your Métis nation and get to know some of the Métis patterns and styles. So it's a really exciting time to be creative. For those teachers or students who are interested, I do have the actual published book about this High Plains ribbon skirt with history and how to make it. A step-by-step guide published by Gabriel Dumont Institute, which is a great support resource. So you have some of the more historical details, historical photos, and other references, and a how-to guide, literally, to make a skirt, a real skirt from selecting the materials, preparing the materials, and learning to work with the pattern. So a little bit about the history of this incredible pattern. It starts with the fur trade. We are the children of the fur trade. And as Métis people, especially the daughters of the country, those first generations of Métis girls, they had their mothers, a lot of them were First Nation or a second generation, third generation Métis with their European trader. And the daughters of the country, they were called by many people in the historians. These daughters could see their grandmothers, their First Nations grandmothers, working with hide dresses with the pattern that had the beautiful hide style with the fringe at the bottom. And they got to learn about that type of clothing, and many learned that as well as part of their early fur trade clothing. But what happened is the younger generations got access to their fathers, their grandfathers, their uncles, their husbands' trade items at the fur trade posts where they could get fabric, they could get ribbon. And later on, as the fur trade gets progressive, there's more options. There's lace, there's velvet ribbon, all sorts of appliques, which are just amazing things created by the Hudson Bay Company or the Northwest Company. So these daughters start to really do what we call infusion and adaptation and innovation. And they start substituting the pattern of the high dresses with fabric. And so what we have in history, prior to the formation of Canada, is the Métis daughters are innovating this beautiful skirt style, and they're making these skirts and they're applying ribbons. They're trying to mimic and substitute with what they have, and it was such a way of telling their story, honoring their family's trade relationship. So there was lots of positive things about it. Economically, you literally, as these women wore this style, it was a very beautiful style with a big flare and a gathered ruffle at the bottom. It was very straight and flared. It almost looks like the province of Saskatchewan. And then at the bottom, there's a gathered ruffle to mimic that beautiful fringe at the bottom of high dresses. So there was a way to get that look with substitution of materials and fabrics and some sewing techniques as well. And just a little to get that. The ruffle is the definitive part of the pattern. Okay. A lot of ribbon skirts we see are straight, but this Métis fur trade style has this beautiful little attached gathered ruffle, and there's some pleats. This is a beautiful polka dotted fabric. So the sewing techniques, the daughters of the country, the first generations of Métis who started to wear these skirts, they would gather, they would learn some sewing techniques, add whatever ribbons and elements of design to them. So that was very important. It created identity. It encouraged creativity and innovation with the Métis and to find what they could get from the company, the fur trade company, post and put into their clothing to express themselves. And lots of they didn't have the selection we do today. They had a very limited design palette, but they had a lot of like what we call little floral prints. We call that granny print. No, and I don't see one here, but I do have the mixed media work that I did for, and this little piece of fabric here is called granny print. It's little flowers. It's also called calico. So they had a beautiful little floral that had access in the fur trade in the early years of the Métis development. They had a lot of blues and reds, limited ribbon at the beginning, a lot of beads and trade items early on. And so their skirts were a lot of fabric and gathered ruffle, and then just started adding more elements over time. So it's wonderful that they took what they had and started to develop their story. And very, there's painters who came out to the early fur trade and painted some of the Métis women, and their clothing really had such color and vibrancy. The clothing they made for others in their family, the men, the beaded items. So it's such a wonderful legacy of Métis innovation, expression, cultural identity, and creativity. And I think that's what we can all learn is how to be creative. Another common fabric was polka dots. They had lots of polka dots so polka dots in many different, they came in big pieces of like bolts, they called them, from the fur trade. They'd come off the ships and the bay would start distributing these big bolts, and women would buy that for their sewing. So lots of polka dots are very old fabric style. And because Hudson Bay Company had trade all over the world, like they had amazing trade network, from the 1600s, 1700s, we're talking long ago. They also had like trade partners in India, and you get these beautiful, what they're called paisleys. They kind of look like a teardrop with a swirl right here. I love them. And so you used to get fabric with lots of little paisleys. So there's a lot of elements that can be added into your contemporary art project that are rooted in the Métis history. And as time goes on, and now today, there's a little bit of adaptation and there's a lot more sewing items. So we get a lot more different sizes of ribbons. We get a lot of other fabrics, and a lot of contemporary Métis artists are actually cutting existing fabric out, and they are actually stitching them. So I actually cut these beautiful spirit buffaloes, and the spirit buffaloes, I actually sewed them on. So applique is having a base layer. So I have a beautiful red kind of like beadwork style upper part of this skirt, and I have a beautiful white buffalo, and I've got that stitched on, and that's called applique, putting layers on layers. I also have my famous Métis patch pockets, which is a little more, it's recenter history when they started to put like pockets on more, and there's beaded work on this pair of patch pockets. So I've got a lot of like, this skirt is like my dedication to the English Métis trade, where the city I live is Prince Albert, and there's an old Hudson Bay Company trade post here. Over the years, there's still a lot of trading going on in the area. And I wanted to honor everything that a Métis woman would have bought in the like early 1900s at our post. So I put wool patch pockets with beads. I put beautiful velvet ribbon. I had different sizes of ribbon, lace. Rick rack is this really nice little jiggly line that can be sewed. And so I really used some of the techniques, but also in the skirt design, this one is a double ruffle. Sometimes they would stack ruffles at the bottom so that they were warmer. They had so much more color. They would, be able to like protect the legs and keep them warmer. And they also just had style and moved beautiful with movement and dancing. This pattern with the big flared ruffle is a really beautiful danceable wearable skirt for dancing. And the Métis, if over time we have been known for our beautiful dancing, jigs, real square dancing. And this skirt pattern was so beloved in our Métis gatherings and dances for generations. So we sometimes had, here's a single ruffle at the bottom of this skirt, and this one has the double ruffle, a navy blue one and a beautiful white one to look like the Hudson Bay Company blankets. So as you see, there is such an amazing history of growing, telling your story with what you have, expressing identity, culture, story. Wearing basically your clothing is identity. It tells your story to the world. And this Métis style kind of really became so evident during the High Plains, and it was so worn for generations from as the fur trade progressed. And, we're talking about the late 1800s, mid 1800s, early 1800s, that early range where Métis were really very prominent all over the Western Plains, High Plains, and in many different community spaces. And this pattern became associated with Métis women of history. And the reason I actually did the book and started doing a lot of artwork is because ribbon skirts are so important in Canada with the Indigenous community. And our First Nations relatives really have done a lot of work to share their stories about that, the meaning of the skirt. And I wanted people to know about the Métis, our history with the skirt, and our continued relationship and growing relationship with our skirt pattern that we wore in the fur trade that we featured in the book that we published through Gabriel Dumont Institute based on lots of research. The historic photos are amazing, and I'm just really happy that I've been able to be as a Métis artist. I paint, I sew, I do beadwork, not like I used to, and I'm able to help others see and learn about Métis style, about our design principles, our love of flower beadwork, repeating patterns, symmetry and balance. And I like for me when I sew today, when I make a skirt today, I always like to put a little splash of the older generation's design, like fabrics that they would have had or certain colors. I put a splash of the past, but I always adapt my work to today. So I'm buying these amazing fabrics, colors that they wouldn't have had, and I'm using different things with my imagination, using the same historic pattern. And I'm taking a little from the old, but I'm also adapting to today. And because Métis people, we're here today. We're still here. We're growing strong. We're sharing our identity, our culture with everyone in Canada. And we want everyone to learn our story so people could learn about us and grow and learn to identify who we are. And today we're wearing our skirts, but some families wear the straighter skirt, but there are Métis families who are going back, and we're really seeing this pattern coming back today because of the wonderful work with the National Ribbon Skirt Day that happens every year in early January. So our skirts and our identity is really starting to become prominent. Our place in the circle of Canada's Métis people, Métis women, Métis artists telling our story with our clothing. I think it's a wonderful time. So I do share this resource with Rupertsland and to help grow anyone who wants to get into the Métis design mode. And through it, we get to honor Métis women in this circle, past, present, because we want to really learn about, who are the people of the Métis. And then this project that I designed, the lesson and the wonderful mixed media artwork, is to help everyone connect with Métis principles of design, Métis identity, culture, and our history, but also our continued expression as Métis people. and our continued innovation and creativity. So I hope you enjoyed learning about the High Plains pattern. To me, it's very special. I really, really promote the pattern because there was a time that I observed here where I live, and I've traveled a lot in Western Canada and a bit in Eastern Canada, and I work with lots of Métis communities over the years. And this pattern, when I was young, I was seeing it. And then the last 30 years, not seeing it, not seeing it, not seeing the pattern. And I really worked with Bonnie Johnson on this book. So the pattern, the Métis style pattern that was so who we were and continue to be, I didn't want it gone. And I'm seeing it coming back. So my authorship of the book and doing these type of art workshops are to keep that Métis culture alive and thriving and educating everyone about Métis design so that you can see it and know it. And now you'll probably be more aware of all these different design principles in our artistic palette as you learn about doing a Métis style skirt with mixed media. So I do encourage research there that and just exploring some of the past and the clothing, and then making those innovations today to tell that story of what you learned about Métis people. So enjoy the art, have fun. You know, art is to me is just a way to bring people together in a good way. And it's such a joyous way to learn about our past and look at where we are today and then open up future possibilities. And that's what the whole intention of this project is to just do that beautiful healing reconciliation work in a good way, done in a good way, so that we all can grow and have that balance and harmony that is such a vision of our elders. And I got to end with the beautiful symbol of my favorite symbol of my nation, my Métis Nation, which to me is a symbol of balance and harmony. Look at that amazing figure eight. We kind of go away from center, but we come back. We go away, we come back, we go away. And with the ribbon skirt, I can't think of a better symbol of the history and the continued growth of a Métis ribbon skirt because our past and our future. And that skirt is an expression of both of it, both of those, the history of the pattern and the pattern still alive today. And all those little artists in the middle are creating their own version of it. And it's a wonderful thing to see. So I hope you enjoy being creative. Thank you for listening. And again, there's a lot of great support material in the Rupertsland package to do this lesson and give you the really important information about Métis design, our history, and you'll learn so much. And I hope you have fun doing it. Bye, everyone. Masi.